Hola Community, welcome to BlenderToday live. We have some news today. We have a few changes in Blender that make it slightly faster in some areas. It's not everywhere. Before you like, oh, my cycles render is gonna be twice as fast, but EEVEE is faster. There's some improvements in assets, loading, geometry, a bit all over the place. But to be honest, there's not that many new things today. Still, it's fun to get together, and there are actually there's a few things. There's compositor updates, there is sequencer, actually those are nice. Rigify, well, you can actually see them in the titles up here, a little spoiler, but other than that, maybe we can have a little demo of something that is coming up. Actually, yes, I want to cover one of the changes. There is an experimental feature that I'm going to cover, and the other one is maybe, well, today I get a presentation here together with Brecht and at the studio about texture layers. Very early prototype, basically showing what is on the blog post, but to other people here so they can give feedback. And there was a build around that. It's really early, has a million bugs and everything, but you know, maybe we could have a look at that if there is enough time. How are you, by the way? How's your Blender doing? Today, we don't have any announcements, but I was actually in the blog of the Blender Studio website, and I'm not, this is not to sell anything because this is free. One of the trainings that the Blender Studio has, Blender Studio website has, is the Blender Fundamentals. And for 5.2, the whole, for Blender 5.2 LTS, there is an update on the entire training, basically. However, we're now in 5.2 LTS, and there has been an update. I think the name of the actual training doesn't now apply anymore, but the training update is on animation fundamentals, and this is free for everyone. You don't even need to be logged in to see this, and it's pretty nice. It's by Rick, so it covers animation from the perspective from an animator / director, even preparing for animation, the workspaces, creating the scene, keyframes, everything about animation, and with videos and everything. So this is a documentation that the Blender Studio gives away to the world, so you should check it out and share it with people. What else? That's all, actually. I share it with you in the chat, by the way. I have you all over here, and I'm gonna put you back in my other screen. What else? I think we are good to to start. There's not much announcements, as I mentioned. Let's start with what's new in Blender for animation. In animation, there's small things. One is just a UI change, but we're gonna see this in a few more places. This is more UI than animation itself, but you will notice that up to recently, Blender, every time there needed to be like some kind of message in Blender, we would use regular text, and there was no way to wrap this text into multiple lines. And there is now, since a few weeks already, and many areas in Blender will start moving into using that slowly, but this one already did. For example, you're gonna see that Blender now, you can read more things because text wraps up. It's not automatic though. This is something that in every section, every label, basically you have to choose instead of label multi-line. This is for you add-on developers or extensions developers that want to use this. You're gonna see it in more places. Just wanted to highlight that in case you also run into that issue. Then another UI only change is the name of the operator called make markers local. This, I don't remember even when was this added. I think it was post markers, like a long time ago, because the name is wrong. Markers or the word local in Blender is used in the context always of linked data, and this was more related to converting into these kind of markers, which are post markers. But yeah, also post markers are kind of end of life, but it's good to keep them, at least the documentation, alive. But it is kind of end of life because it's the idea that more people are using the asset shelf with previews, with different influence. You should no longer rely on markers. If you didn't know that post markers exists, that was the old way of doing markers. You go to a frame, you mark, okay, this marker is a pose, and that's how you would refer to it. It's really archaic, but still in Blender because, like I say, you need to keep all systems running. So it's just a PSA, public service announcement, that the name of that operator has changed. However, I do want to highlight that markers are going to get some new features soon. I would say 5.3, because many of the changes are under the hood are happening now in around these days, so there is time. And I know some of them are some requests that are on right click select, and people really like them. So soon, prepare. Thanks to Red Emser. So Emser. Let's see. A for assets. In assets, there's mainly has to do with speed. So this is part of the faster aspect of this episode. So download online previews in LIFO fashion instead of FIFO fashion. What is LIFO and FIFO fashion? Well, FIFO stands for first in, first out. That fashion is usually in fashion on a store. You're selling clothes, for example, and it means that the first in is the one to go out. So the oldest t-shirt that you got in your store is the first one that you're going to sell, right? And what does it have to do with the assets? Well, when you're downloading the asset previews, for example, it would mean that the first one that was requested, it would be the first one to be removed, which it sounds fine, but actually that makes things slower, because if you're requesting the last preview that you had or the first one that was loaded, maybe it's the last item. So when you scroll, it feels sluggish. It feels like things are taking longer to load, but no, it's because Blender might be loading something that is slightly off screen. And with this change to LIFO instead of FIFO, LIFO stands for last in, first out. So that means the last one was well, the opposite. Instead of the first, the last one item. Anyway, it's fun stuff. I actually didn't know about this. I had to read just for this. So this is by Sivren, who also added something that it has to do with performance as well, which is parallelization. So multiple previews can be downloaded at once. 5 are by the time of this. Is actually 5 previews in parallel. So if one request hangs, for example, if you're loading an asset library that has, if you're showing all the asset libraries, and one of the remote assets libraries is from Japan, and you are in the US or in Europe, it might take longer to load, and I've noticed that. So in this case, Blender will try to load all the other ones instead. So nice. Or if one particular thumbnail is bigger, or not existent even. So that is also super nice, that now Blender should feel a lot more snappier. And related to the multi-line and multi-boxes, this is in the asset browser sidebar. You will see now that there is so nice. There is the fields for description, license, copyright, and author are now multi-line, which means they can, well, they always supported long rows of text, but you can actually read it in one go. This is the first iteration. Actually, right after that, the lines were limited to 1 by default, but you can always expand it. So it means that only the description would be multi-line, but just do not have the UI too large. The license, copyright, and author would be 1 line. You can always click and drag to expand it, but it's so nice. Text boxes all over the place. Thank you, Guillermo. back to Sivran's work. Encode minimal until Blender versions in the asset blend file name. Yeah, so this has to do with something that people reported in 5.2 as well, I believe. This, well, the first release with remote assets. It could happen that you have assets from 5.2 and 5.3, which would make it look like sometimes there is twice as many assets or the same asset multiple times. And it's not actually multiple times, it's a different asset. Maybe one was made for 5.2 and the other one for Blender 5.3, but Blender is showing both. This change makes it so that the asset itself can have, the blend file itself can have in the name of the blend file like a secret code that will make it show up only in, oh, thunderstorm. I have to bike back home. Sorry, I didn't know. I don't know. I don't know if you get to see. No, my screen, no. But there is 31 degrees in. Sorry for the sidetrack. Oh my God. Back to Blender. If I get shocked by a thunder, I love you all. In the Blender, the blend file names, it's also useful for you. It's not just a Blender internal thing, but if you're making your own asset libraries, Blender should do it for you when you're building the listing. But in this case, you can also do it yourself, I believe. So basically, the minimal required version of Blender can be encoded in the file name by using an @ symbol, B, and then the version _ subversion. So if the assets in that file require Blender 5.3 or newer, you can name it that way, and then Blender will know it's like, hey, I don't need to show that file. And the same example here with 5.3, which will be from 5.3 until 6.0, the next one, because there is also 6.0. So that way, any file, but if you have these 3 blend files, you can tell Blender to show you one or the other. So nice. And you keep all 3 copies. So if you have even that's so nice, because you can have one folder with all your assets, and Blender will show you which one corresponds to it just based by the name. That's cool. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. This is not yet in Blender. However, should I show you? Yes, I show you. Come on. It's my last day. Let's assume always assume it's your last day. So this is a feature that is coming soon to your Blender near you. It's something you already have, compositing effects, right? In your scene in layers, but it's not there yet. However, the assets to be used in layers are being prepared already, which means, remember when EEVEE in 4.1 had one-click bloom? Well, this is 2 clicks, because you first need to open the menu and then bloom, but it's essentially one-click bloom, which is awesome. Blender can ship with many, well, actually it's already shipping with many scene effects, and those will be available in the same way as they are now, but listed as a layer system that you can easily move around, like modifiers. Let me show you. Where am I? Well, actually, it's not much to show you. Well, I can actually show you, yes. The PR, the working PR, this is illegal. I always show you Blender today, and this is Blender tomorrow. So this PR basically allows you to do this. You have a monkey with dispersion, which actually, look at this, it looks like a modifier at first, but then if you pay attention, you see that it's not called modifier, it's called effect, and it's not in the modifiers stack. It's in the new tab that we will call Compositor. So this is coming eventually, soonish. But what I was actually sharing is that the assets are already prepared for it. It's so nice. Anyway, coming soon. Let's see. Before bake, that's just so nice. I've never seen contributions by this person, Roman. Like, oh, maybe I have. But this is so nice. I think I've noticed a few times that if the pixels of your when you're baking, if the pixels of your UVs are too small, Blender would maybe skip those, like tiny triangles. It wouldn't bake them properly, and it will leave like a little gap. So basically unusable in small images. Sometimes the workaround was to render bake big and then scale down. However, this has been fixed by Roman. Let's see. So this image says everything. This is how it used to be with the conservative rasterization. That's how they call it. Off. Look at how tiny triangles would be skipped completely. Basically, this became 4 pixels. And in here, also, and now it's so nice. So really welcome addition. Sometimes it would be even skipped altogether. Actually, this is one example, and this is the fix. I mean, it goes from broken to usable. You need to make sure that you leave enough margin around the seams, but this is amazing. So yeah, I guess because it is a bit more conservative, maybe use a bit more memory, or I don't know, but I mean, it works. That's so cool. Thank you so much, Roman, for making baking better. Let's see. Baking. Someone's hungry now. Before. Oh, okay. This maybe not worth mentioning, but if you're building Blender on Mac OS, the minimum version of Xcode has been bumped from 16.0 to 16.3. But Mac OS 16 is very old, right? So you're probably on something newer by now. Let's see, a bunch of cleanups. Blender is squeaky clean. And the letter C for Compositor has many new nodes, actually. Well, ported from other places. Integer math node has been ported to the Compositor now. So you can actually do math with an image. This is a splash screen for Blender 3.0 by Daniel Bystedt, doing some math in green, which shows that it is an integer. Then, bam. I have no idea what they're doing here, but I can tell the nodes are the ones in there. Interesting. Okay. This is from the Compositor with GPU support and regression testing. So cool. Thank you, Chris. Next, port combine separate, also by Chris. No, Christian. Chris Iviana, but for some reason it has a different name in the list. Combine separate transform nodes have been ported over. Ooh. I like the transition between rotation and transform matrix sockets. So cool. Thank you. Separate and combined transforms are now ported over to the Compositor, as well as the hash value node and the random value node. Oh, okay. Here we actually see a combination of hash value and combined matrix. So cool. And another one, random value. I missed this one. Random value. Oh, random is in. I always use random values. And now it's available in the Compositor. Funky setups coming up. I love this. Thank you. And I put a heart on it there. Thank you, Chris. Next, we have Omar with render scenes. Oh, have you? This is since day one that the Blender Compositor wouldn't let you make groups if you had a render layer node selected. There will be an error. This error was removed. The warning was removed at some point, but the issue is still happening. But there's no reason for it anymore because now Blender can treat those internally as group nodes. So yeah, render scenes reference inside node groups as regular node groups. So no more limitations. Oh, and this is also funny. The other day in the Compositor channel, somebody shared a really Gleb Alexandrov on some social media shared some other user using the Compositor during playback and adjusting the settings while it was playing back, just to show that now you can use the Compositor during playback. Remember, I think I showed you it was because it's really quick. And I think that's 5.2 feature, so quick to update. The thing is, while you're adjusting it, the progress bar was constantly flickering so much that was very annoying. I shared that in the chat of the Compositor, and then Omar immediately was, well, I suggested, hey, I think we can get not show the progress bar while playing back. Doesn't make sense. It will never stop. The playback will never be too slow to let the progress bar progress. And he was like, yep, I'm already removing it, so it's gone. Nice. No more flickering in the UI while you're tweaking a composite scene and playing back. So nice. This one I didn't highlight it, but worth mentioning, optimize pixel operations in the Compositor as well. Let's go to see it for core. Plenty of core changes. I just wanted to highlight one in particular because there was a comment on the other day on the reel, on the Blender reel, and the Blender features, basically like showing all the features in 5.2. And one comment was like, hey, imagine how far it would be if they didn't spend money on the Blender Studio. And you know, maybe it was rage bait, probably it was rage bait, and I shouldn't go there. But maybe many people still think that the Blender development fund, the money that goes to development, is also funding the studio. But no, they are separate entities. The Blender Studio has its own subscription system. So that's what it, but regardless of that, there is so much input from the studio that helps to make Blender better, such as here. Core, optimize truly indirect packed data on write. What does it mean? Well, packed data is when you have the pack icon basically on anything, any asset that you dragged into your scene. So Blender doesn't pack the same thing multiple times. It just finds it, okay, this is the one, and it's indirect. So I'm gonna use it only once and not pack it all the time. Anyway, it's something very under the hood that can lead to big files, for example. And it's a lot of headaches to get this to work, and also to get it reliable in a way that it's not going to break blend files. So how do you make sure that this doesn't break blend files? Well, by having a studio downstairs who's making a feature film, or trying to, also short films with lots of characters and environments and so on. And you can read in the discussion, basically, even though they're in the same building. This makes it easier to get a notification if someone is traveling or so. But basically, yes. So by the way, I fixed this file, which probably they shared in real life. It's easier. That it fixes the issue. Cool. And then they test the builds and then fix a dummy mistake. And then Simon approved, tested and approved that, hey, actually the file sizes went down by a few megabytes. In some cases, it brings down a file size of 4 megabytes to 400 kilobytes. So this not only makes Blender lighter, load less files, but you know, it's cool to make sure that there is an actual production testing this thing before it goes into Blender for everyone. So that's cool. Just wanted to say that. Next, let's move into cycles. No. Dependency, no. Draw, there is in draw. So the draw engine, everything that you see on screen, overlays. There is one optimization by Ilya that brings an example blend file from basically copying the color attribute in this blend file from 6 milliseconds to 3 milliseconds, which doesn't sound like much, but it's twice as fast, 6 milliseconds to 3 milliseconds. So if you run this, for example, there is an example blend file that's fun to see. So this is before and after. So basically this animation of basically with geometry nodes copying, this is going to 9 milliseconds. It's copying an attribute in this galaxy looking explosion simulation in geometry nodes. Super nice, by the way. It's a bit, 9 milliseconds, 9 frames per second. And with this change, it goes to 18 frames per second, 19, because it is twice as fast. So this is amazing. Yep, your simulation, go simulate the galaxy. Twice as fast. Again, back to the topic. It is faster. Blender is faster in this episode than the previous one. When no user attributes are used, this reduces the memory usage by 4 times, 4x. So it's not only faster, but also less memory. This change is old, but the blend file itself, which used to play back slow, now plays faster. Nice. Super nice. Thank you, Ilya. So this is the PR, just in case I didn't show it. Nice. Wow, it is faster. Users here in the chat are reporting that Blender 5.2 is noticeably faster. Yes, and for 5.3 is already looking much faster. When is it going to release? I'm excited. It will release on November 10, but let me show you how you can actually get there. You go to projects.blender.org. In the sidebar, there is the releases, active releases. You can click on 5.3 and you will find the release date, November 10, 2026. That's it. Tutorial on how to know when Blender is going to be released. Maybe a week later if something happens, but that's it. Let's switch to E4EEVEE. 2 speed ups. 1. Speed up render by not tagging usage something. So this is a speed up render. It doesn't mention any how much faster things are. However, Clement doesn't mention, but there is a lot of celebration going on here. I'm gonna celebrate as well because Miguel just posted that this is a 1.5x performance improvement. It's weird that there is so much variance in raster times between captures though, but still 1.5 times faster EEVEE, in this case for shadows. That's amazing. If you have many shadows, things should be faster now. Also, avoid shadow read back. What does it mean? In most cases, it is faster to just submit 2 shadow passes than waiting for the feedback buffer. So this something that used to take 21, almost 22 seconds in main, now takes 16 seconds, a little over 16 seconds. That's amazing. More hearts here. This person deserves all the hearts. So cool. Nice. So EEVEE faster, geometry nodes faster, assets faster. Nice. I thought it was a bit clickbaiting with the. I don't like clickbaits unless there's a good reason for it. It's like actually it's better than clickbait. But I actually know this. Everything that I mentioned so far is actually making things faster. So let's move on. Fixes. So many fixes. Actually, most of the changes are out of 200 something, 100 over something are just fixes. Let's go to G for geometry nodes. Rasterized points. Oh, there's a new node called. There's 2 new nodes actually. The first one, rasterized points for converting to grid. It creates volume grids from point data using rasterization. And we can actually look at how it is, how it looks here. So this change by Lucas added this node. So basically you have the points and rasterize gives you, well, let me actually scroll up here. Maybe you can see it better. Is that better? Yeah. There you go. So raster has points, voxel size, and matrix. It takes an input for points, a menu, matrix, quadratic B-spline, position density, and it outputs a bunch of Rubik cubes, also known as volume sockets. Nice. With the properties list here, it's a vector. Nice. Use stagger vector. This is wrong. The labels in Blender, we try to avoid the word use because that's implied by the use of a checkbox. It's a boolean. So I think that should change. We should change that. So nice. Thank you so much, Lucas. More hearts. The other node is also, it outputs a list of geometry material. So it instead of getting one material, you just give it a geometry and it gives you a list of all the materials in that geometry. Also pretty handy. Could you make this with a node group? Maybe, but more handy like this way. You can also split it by domain: component type, mesh, point cloud, curve, grease pencil. Next, support curves in the set material node. Oh, that's cool. Didn't support it before. It would complain. It would tell you, hey, no, this is not a supported domain. So the set material and the set material index nodes don't allow changing materials with selection fields on curves, even though this is fully supported. This patch extends support for geometry types in material nodes. Nice. Next, more aggressive. What is this aggressive? Oh, attribute sharing on field capturing. Yeah, so attribute sharing on field capturing. So Blender tries to share as much as possible, you know, with the spirit of open source. No, but also because it is efficient. If you have one attribute that is already used by many other geometries, well, you can share it if it matches. The code that tells if something can be shared or not has been optimized to be a bit more, but finding more of these sharing, successful sharing. In this example by the mouse house by Edindale, the sharing went from 16 to 18. Nice, more sharing. Okay, next, G4 Ghost, the handy operating system toolkit functions. This is good news for Linux users. If you remember in Blender, I think it was 4 or 5, 4. It was a round number that Blender added support on macOS and Windows to change the color titles in the window. And now it has been added to Wayland. So yeah, because X11 is no longer, is end of life, it's no longer supported, but this is added here. So cool. So basically it matches the title bar with the colors added by the top bar in the same way that is done in macOS and Windows. So super nice. Yeah, I thought there would be a video, but no. Oh, 2024 was, gee, time flies. And the other change is also related to Ghost and Wayland. That makes it possible to resize the window outside of the main, using a region outside of the main window. You know, you can do this sometimes, but now it works on Wayland. I think it was lost at some point. Okay, let's move into G4 GPU. Okay, one change only, but it has big implications for macOS or Metal users. So Apple macOS users. Implement GPU Ray Query API on the Metal backend, mirroring the Vulkan implementation from this change that I shared a few weeks ago, I think. When was that? I think so. It was not that long ago. Acceleration structures can now be built and traversed for any shader on Apple Silicon. Yeah, this was actually last month. So yeah, amazing. Basically, again, yay, related to speed, ray tracing, ray queries. So in the future, I think they even want to make it work with the, well, I think this, but right now is a Workbench ray trace shadows, optional, but they can be ray traced. But also the raycast node can in the future support ray tracing. So in hardware ray tracing. So it means that if you're using Mac M3 or newer, or if you're using AMD equivalent, or if you're using an RTX NVIDIA graphics card. So cool. So thank you for adding this. This is by Jason Filter from Apple, actually. Apple did it. That's it. Let's move into I/O. Yes. Okay, so I/O. Input, output, import, or port. This feature is not in, it's still experimental, but let me show you. Let's see if anybody gets excited here, because it's actually pretty handy, especially if you work a lot with importing things constantly from other formats into Blender. For the time being, it's USD. So let me show you. Where am I here? Yeah. So I have Blender over here. So I don't have a USD file to show you actually, but let's just show you the interface, how it looks at the moment. It's still really early work in progress. Let's go to experimental and enable collection import. In collection import, we have now a new panel for any collection. Let's add a new collection, basically. And I just show without voluntarily show a new feature that I'm going to show you of the outliner in a bit. Basically, there is this new panel called Importer. In the same way that this is the new Exporter, added a few versions ago, remember that you can add instead of going to the file menu, export every time, now you can actually have an exporter here and re-export as many times as you want. It's very, very convenient because you can export one thing to multiple formats at once. Just showing you this in case you didn't know, but this is how it works at the moment. So convenient. You can export them all at once in one go, multiple formats. This concept, you can't import multiple, or maybe you can, but for this case, so far, let's remove the exporters and let's keep the importer. This is what is new and experimental. You can add a new importer, for the time being is the USD importer, and this allows you to have not a live update, but almost live. You can re-import it multiple times without having to go to file, import multiple times, and that is on a collection basis. So it's great. Basically, you can specify your file path, even relative paths are supported as well right now. It doesn't support so far yet, it's a work in progress. It doesn't support re-importing I think of the same format, or it's gonna give you a warning. Last time I tested it, I don't know if it has been fixed so far, but it's so convenient. You just set your import and then you can click re-import as many times as you want. So cool. So yeah, you have to select a collection. You need to actually make it active. You select the collection, and this is per collection, by the way. The UI needs some love. Like I don't like the huge remove button bigger. Like this is the biggest call to action, when if maybe in practice you would actually want to import a few more times. Anyway, you see, like now it still lets you click on import, but then it complains. That should be grayed out. Should we have a disabled text that it can tell you before you actually click? It should prevent you from do not let me fail, Blender. Anyway, exciting things. These are coming to 5.3 probably, because it's already experimental. Yes, this is by Jesse. Next, yeah, relative file path, what I mentioned before, now has been added to collection import. Creates a new proxy file path property that allows relative path. Nice. Okay, next. O4 outliner. Yes, so this is so cool. This is a request from a long time. You can find it on right-click select. The awesome Pratik made it so that when you create a new collection, it's a quality of life improvement. So you create a new collection, you can start typing the name. Yes. And if you have a big file, or well, big enough that you're basically in scroll out of the view and you're there and you make a new collection with the dot with here, or by just pressing C for creating a new collection, you can start typing right away. And the scrolling is not perfect, but I think it might have to do with the resolution scale. This scale is always tricky, so let's try again. So I'm gonna make this tiny, and then no, it's also offset. What if I offset it all the way up? No. I think it has to do... It gets even worse because when you mouse over this region, you have the horizontal scroller. So I think we need to be a bit more... if it's the last item in the list, maybe we can make it scroll all the way down. But anyway, the thing is, when you create a new collection now, Blender will scroll that collection into the view and let you start the typing the name right away. It is quality of life, I think. Yes, it adds one extra step if you don't care about your collection names, but you should care about your collection names. You can always escape or click away if you don't mind, if you don't want that getting on the way. And another feature that was also requested on right-click select is the being able to hide the unselected elements in the outliner. You may find this feature familiar because that's already an option in the 3D view, and now has been added to the sequencer. Is Shift H, the same way as the viewport, and it hides the unselected items in the view. So nice. Thank you, Pratik. More outliner things to come for 5.3. Next, Paint. There is one change in Paint, but it's still worth mentioning. The Paint, the change is very small. It's actually a one-liner, but it's based on user feedback, because it seems like vertex and weight painting were using the Sculpt pivot point for some operations, and that shouldn't happen because it's different, right? You're sculpting. When you sculpt, you if you didn't know, you sculpt here, you can mark this as the pivot point, so that when you rotate, it's always around this point. And vertex paint and weight paint were using this point as pivot point. That's wrong. So far, one day when you can vertex paint in sculpt mode, maybe that would be brought back because it is the same pivot point, but not yet. So this one-liner fixes it. Thank you, Sean. Next changes, let's see. Refactors, bunch of refactors. Actually, you can find some of the marker refactors that I mentioned before related to the upcoming changes in markers. Another contribution by the community in R4 render. Austin Verenier made it so the render would pause automatically when you render. This is the viewport render. Have you ever noticed that if you have the viewport render running and you render, both will be rendering at the same time? If that's something you wanted, I'm sorry, now it will pause automatically. There was discussion about if it should be a option or not, but come on. I don't think it should be an option. We shouldn't be adding options for those things. So yeah, basically now you see it is still noisy and the render is going on. Then you stop the render and the viewport render resumes. So cool. I would actually, I mean, speaking of options, I wouldn't mind an option to free the memory, because Blender keeps the memory of the viewport render in memory. So if you have a render that takes 12 gigabytes of RAM, VRAM, and your graphics card has 24, when you render the other render, it uses 24, like 12 and 12. So sometimes you can fail. I would actually prefer to have an option to maybe, okay, discard, free the memory from the viewport and give it all to the render. Maybe. I mean, you can always do it yourself, switch to solid mode and let Blender free up the memory in the performance settings. All right, let's move on to R4 Rigify. There's two changes, just purely visual. This is some aesthetic changes. I don't think there's any user-facing change. These are by Wayne Dixon from ZG Cookie. There is a before and after, basically small changes, labels changes, icon changes. No functionality has changed as far as I can tell. The other PR is also just tidying up the Bone Collection UI section in the Rigify add-on, but no user non-destructive changes, basically. Thank you, Wayne. Next, for Sculpt. This, oh, nice. Pressure curve customization for hardness, auto smooth, and spacing. Actually, this one I can show you in Blender. Let's see, I happen to have my own 3D software over here. So this is Blender, Sculpt mode. I'm sculpting. In brush, you have hardness, auto smooth, and spacing in stroke. Yeah, spacing. So this now you can find they have their own pressure sensitivity icon here that allows you to set a custom pressure. So not here. Here you can only toggle it because otherwise it would get too messy, I think. You can go to the sidebar tool, and here's where you can expand these panels and just perform your hardness curve. It would be nice to see it. Like I would like to see a well, similar to where do we have that in painting? I think that you can see the circle becoming darker and lighter to show the hardness. That would be a nice overlay in the brush itself. But yeah, basically auto smooth, spacing, and hardness now have custom curves. Next. Thank you. Who's this? Cherry Way. As for shading, only one. There's a lot of one feature per topic. Sounds like a lot of topics. I swear it's not clickbait or just trying to, but this is worth mentioning. The shader nodes would not let you have recursive closures before. They were forbidden because they could lead to an infinite recursion. But now recursive closures are allowed, and infinite loops are prevented by enforcing a maximum stack limit. The same approach as geometry nodes. So this is now supported in geometry nodes. I think the limit is 100 by default. Yeah. Same as the geometry nodes. Nice. Go nuts. Next, tests, translations, U and I for user interface. First, let's start with cleaning things up. I think I mentioned this in the last episode because I was about to, because I made another change. So basically, this is 5.2, the regular theme-based settings, which are generic for every editor, had titles, text, header. All of this really is no longer really needed because there is equivalent for header text, just use a text, and text highlight also, and title was never really used because we already have panel titles, the colors for that. So now it looks like this, a lot less features and tests and settings to tweak in your theme. So super nice, super welcome. And the results should be very similar. There's not really much change. I think the color of the dope sheet color in the header is slightly dimmer, but I kind of like it. But that's it. The text highlight color was used by the color of the playhead. Next, Julian Isol made it so you can now, via Python, populate or access the top and the status bar from Python. That's nice. So I think we're going to start to see more things added to the status bar and the status bar down here and the top bar. Nice. Next. Oh, that's so cool. For 2D animators, for everyone, basically. 3D viewport now supports roll for camera views. It has a shortcut called Shift Numpad 4 and 6. It's only accessible by that shortcut so far, but the idea is to add not a gesture, but a gizmo. So you can actually rotate without actually having to learn the shortcut. This is very Blender 2.7 and prior. There is more work to be done. Smooth view. Exiting the camera does not keep the roll. No keybind exists to activate the roll other than the shortcut. And Passepartout render borders do not work. So basically the Passepartout will stay fixed even though you rotate the view. So work in progress, but it's good to see this in. And actually one of these changes, the keep the roll when you exit the camera view, when enter and exit the camera roll, has been fixed already by Campbell. So let's look at it in the PR itself. There should be a video here. And this feature also is one of those that people have been requesting for a long time, because for drawing, it's essential. I know Folk was starting to work on the gizmo itself. So the idea is that when you mouse over the sphere, the navigation gizmo in the viewport, you're going to get some circle indicator that you can click drag to rotate and hold control for snapping and the usual. So nice. So yeah, rolling. Next. Camera roll. Playback popover has been restructured by Nika by adding more. So it used to be very so let's see, it used to be very long. Basically had a section called play in, which added many editors. Also had settings that didn't really belong here. So now it looks like this by default. It has the same amount of options, but they are collapsible and you can collapse them. For example, the editors section, which you probably don't change that often, you can collapse it. It's collapsed by default, and you can expand it to access things, of course. But it's always good to keep things tidy at first, because this popover you can actually access the settings that people use the most, I believe, which are playback, syncing, and all that, loops. So yeah, you can collapse everything, of course, and have a very tiny popover. Next. Speaking of playback buttons, the time jump buttons have been added, have been moved in line with the other playback buttons. So it used to be like this, you remember. You have basically every playback control, but for some reason we added these two separate in a separate group, which I don't know, at the time it didn't seem too bad, but you end up with 3 of these drop downs, and there are a few settings that are coming to the playback control which would require yet another drop down popover. So that would be like, okay, that's a bit much. So what if we unify it? So instead of having it in separate, it's unified. I think there's still work to be done, that we could make the icons a bit more distinguishable in between. So they are, it's hard to tell at a glance, but actually, I mean, the line on the sides is okay, the first and last. Then these are the keyframe, the jump. This goes to the next or the previous keyframe, and this is play forward or backwards. But yeah, small thing. Although, do people really use these buttons, or they use them as a reference? I personally use them mostly for adding shortcuts. So right click, add, remove, change, or even looking up the shortcut that is being used by this operator. Let's see. Next, this is a very small change, but it helps to make Blender look clean. The labels could have sometimes trailing white space. What is that? Well, sometimes you could end up a sentence with like a small gap. So you have like tiny, like the 5 boxing wizard jump, space, and then ellipses. So now that has been fixed. Is the empty spaces are cut. So now you no longer have this weird. I mean, it's a small thing, but once you notice that there was a gap before the ellipses, now you couldn't take it away of your mind. Next, this is by Guillermo. Thank you, Guillermo. Add Python RNA for activating RNA. Oh, Python API for activating RNA buttons. Yeah, this is for you add-on developers that now you can activate RNA buttons using Python. There's the details here. And last but not least, actually this change was added this morning. Yeah. So, no, last night, actually. When was this? Okay. So I was committing this last night at 11:20 p.m. I don't have a life. Add a new project submenu under File and move the settings there. One of the big topics in Blender 5.3 is the addition of project, or the concept of project, and that the way you access projects used to be under Edit, Project Setup, but that was a bit wrong too, because you couldn't do anything by going there before saving the file or saving or making a new project. So there was every action in there until you get there was related to saving or opening or making something new project. So that has been moved to the file menu, which usually hosts all these new file, save, open, etc. So now you go to File, Project, New Project, Open File, because this is to open a specific file that already belongs to a project. In the future, this will host things like Open Project, that's still being worked on. And then you can access the settings. And once you are in the settings, then you can do more things. There are some changes coming here. I don't know, spoilers, but basically the concept of project at the moment, like in Blender today, is very bare bones. You cannot do anything else than have a name and access very basic variables like project root. There is a project for the base project called project variables that lets you add your custom variables, but also its own extensions, its own asset libraries that should be coming soon, actually, that you can have custom asset libraries per project, and templates eventually, I think. But anyway, interesting things for projects in Blender. So Blender 5.3 is already looking awesome, actually, in terms of features. I thought it would have less features because 5.2 was pretty big, but no. All right, last 3 sections still. Gee. Okay, what time is it? 6:20. Okay, we're good. Next, V4 video sequencer. There is 4 changes. One is a tidying up of the effect strips properties menu, which, well, not the menu, but a panel, I think. Yeah, the time panel was showing options that really didn't make any sense for effect strips, like content start and end. Really doesn't make sense because the strip doesn't have an effect strip doesn't have content. It relies on the other strips. So, you know, cleaning up things. And the video was also removed because it didn't make any sense. And the other change, I think, was, no, that's it, I think. Yeah. Thank you, Elon. Next, adjust edge parameter to make it, oh yeah, this is a tweak of the settings in the zooming in and out, the panning of the sequencer, so it feels a lot snappier. So what used to feel like this, that you like tuck, 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 by getting moving a strip to the corners, now it should look like this. So you notice the clunkiness? Maybe it's not obvious enough. It should feel more snappy, basically. So you drag it to the side, drag it to the back. Like it would wait too much for you. You know, you have to leave it there and then wait, and then, but now it's a bit more snappy. You have to use it to notice it. Then this is by John. Thank you, John. And the next one by Philip is called Set Render Size for Scene and Color Strips. So, you know, this feature actually has been around for ages for movie strips. If you have a movie strip that is, I don't know, 720p and your render size is 1080p, you could right click, set render size, and it would resize your dimensions, scene dimensions into the size to fit that strip, but only worked on movie strips. This change makes it work on scene and color strips, because color strips can now have actual sizes. That's not all, actually. This is by Philip, and that was inspired to that's what inspired John to add set render size, scale to fit, so these two, to movie clip, scene movie clip, text, and effect strips, basically. So it's a follow-up to the previous PR, and it makes these two operators, scale stretch to fit fill, and set render size to these movie strip types. Well, effect and text strips. So cool. So, thank you so much, John and Philip. All right, we have two more things. Actually, this is a PSA. So a few weeks ago, like V for Vulkan, yes, a few weeks ago, 5.3 started, there was a change that we actually shared on social media because it was such a big thing that made Vulkan the default. But only the trick was that, you know, if you make Vulkan the default in Blender, it was already moved out of experimental in 5.0, but the default means that you're gonna get a lot more reports. So how do you deal with all those reports? So the trick was, okay, we're gonna make Blender 5.3 and 5.3 the default, but first only for new installs or new preferences, which is not everybody. If you're testing Blender every day, the daily builds, you probably have settings already. So that means that people using old versions or preferences don't get affected. You will still see OpenGL. You have to go manually to change it until now. This change makes it so the preferences, your user preferences, are going to be updated to use Vulkan by default on Windows, x64, not ARM, and on Linux. So if you notice that Blender for some reason is running faster, enjoy. If you're noticing that your Blender for some reason is running slower, there might be something on your setup with Vulkan, so it needs to be checked. So yeah, there will be a lot more bug reports, but the team is getting ready for handling those. So yeah, big change, but it has to be done. In what are we now? We are in October 1st, no, 30th of September 30th. So next month, at the end of next month, 2 months, Blender 5.3 goes beta. So we're gonna get a lot more people using Vulkan, so we're gonna get a lot more reports. So you can help by testing Vulkan on your system and report any issue that you find. Try to ease the life of users. Okay, that's it for Vulkan. I just wanted to highlight that. And the last change, it's something I already mentioned in Workbench. Hardware ray tracing shadows. I think this is optional, yes, under preferences, viewport, quality settings. And the option will be shown as inactive if the current backend doesn't support it. So Vulkan is only support at the moment. However, this is an old, I think this, let's check actually. I'm on a Macintosh here at the moment. So if I go to viewport, quality, shadows, I can actually enable ray tracing shadow. Requires Vulkan, and a GPU with hardware ray tracing support. This is wrong because I am using it and it should have a different tooltip depending, or Vulkan or just metal also, just mainstream metal. Anyway, so this means that in the workbench, whatever shadows you have in your scene are now, like these shadows, they're now ray traced. Nice. And that's it. But you can, it's, I mean, with a cube, you're not going to tell, but this is usually very slow to calculate because it was not very efficient. But now it's ray traced. Awesome. Yay. All right. That is all for the What's New in Blender. Let's see if there is any questions. How are you, by the way? How are you doing? They are opening. And by they, I mean the people in the next, in the room next to me. They have access to a button that opens the lights, the curtains. So you're gonna get more lights. But let's actually go to blender.community, the website where we see the questions that people are leaving. There's 7 questions, so we can maybe go through them really fast. Let's go. Thank you, Navnabad, for making the thread. Let's go. By the way, everybody, there was someone asking, hey, can somebody make the thread? But it's really anybody can make this. Oh, but actually I can edit your post and first add this. I always forget this. I can copy the changes and put them in your post. So that way people can get access to everything that I shared today, which is 264 commits in total, of which 136 were fixes. Crazy. And marked with the emoji are the ones that I mentioned in the live stream. Let's go down to Roca Nitro. Hi, by the way. How are you? How are you doing? I know this video from video.blender.org is old as of publish 2019, but please kindly take a quick look at these comments. Starts from the bottom, maybe reply to some. I'm in the middle of a live stream, but what is it? Which video is it? Particle info notice. You already commented on this in the past, remember? Particle info is, well, this is I'm not gonna waste time. But anyway, I'm gonna waste time. Particle info is this is a particle system from before geometry node. This is no longer is end of life. Particles are end of life. So use geometry nodes. Embrace geometry nodes, please. Let's go. Hi Pablo, I saw that loop cut is part of the summer of code, but there is no mention of the feature where the cuts start from anywhere instead of the middle. What? But there is no mention of the feature where the cut starts from anywhere instead of the middle for loop cut. You mean like this, instead of starting from the middle, start from anywhere? Well, you can click anywhere. I didn't know. I mean, usually starts from the. Oh, I forgot to. Always forget to change the topic to Q&A. I don't understand. What's the issue with the? It's just the starting point that has to change. I didn't know that was one of the features that was listed in there, but it should come. Like, I mean, if it's part of the summit of code. You can always leave those questions. I think there is a dev talk thread where people can leave feedback on summit of code. Let's see. Hola Pablo, thank you so much for the show. Big fan. I was wondering if there is direct editing of attributes planned, like we can do now for vertex groups. 3D viewport, go into edit mode on a mesh, vertex mode. Wait. If there is direct editing of attributes planned, like we can do for vertex groups. Yes, it would be very useful. I mean, don't we have already the, like, isn't there like a mesh attribute? Set attribute. Yeah, you can set an attribute. Or edit attribute. But isn't that set attribute? Mesh set attribute, yeah. But why is it not oh, maybe because I don't have an attribute. Or why is it not marked as such? Mesh set attribute. It's grayed out. And it doesn't, it's really convenient. Mine is still crashing while rendering. No. Okay. Also, why is it mesh set attribute and I don't see it here? Oh, that's because, you know why? You know why it's not? I'm pretending that I don't need those, but I need them. And you probably do too, especially if you're approaching the big 4-0. All right, let's go back to business. In attributes, I don't have any attributes. So why don't you let me make an attribute, Blender? Why would you give just fail? Just add a little attribute for me. That would be more convenient. Or let me add this operator, add attribute from there. So you can add it. Cool. And now I can set this attribute to be a value. There you go. And then if I have a, say, a face corner color, like a UV, like a vertex color, can I edit that? Set attribute? Yes. Nice. So it's like edit attribute, not set attribute, because otherwise it would let me set, you know, do something. So yeah, I think that needs to be adjusted. Thank you so much for the reminder, though. I think it's a it needs some work in UI. Nusar says, "Hi Pablo, I noticed a regression in the FBX exporter. When you save your file as another name or to another folder, and then you export FBX, default path is not being updated. Suppose it is a minor bug, but albeit very annoying. Is it a known bug? Any plan to fix this?" Well, I don't think it's a known bug. You should always report, always. And especially FBX exported, imported, they have been replaced from the Python version to the newer one, right? So we should, yeah, this is actually the built-in one, the C++. So always report, because maybe it's something that worked in the past and it wasn't taken into account. Always, when in doubt, bug report. Thank you. Next. Hola Pablo, I hope you're doing well. I have been wanting texture painting layers for so long, so hearing it's coming sometime soon. It's so exciting. Before getting too excited though, I had a question about how exporting will work. I use texture painting to create assets for games. I start with modeling, UV unwrapping, then painting the texture and exporting it to my engine as a PNG. I'm imagining with texture layers, it would be able to create layers and utilize them to their fullest. Then export them as single image to my engine without destructively immersing the stack within Blender. Yes, that is part of baking. So ideally, I mean, all the layers will be part of one image for convenience. So at the beginning, if you have one image, you know, EXR, Blender can keep all the layers in one image, but you should be able to export them in the format that you're used to, that you have in like character underscore pass channel underscore UDM tile, for example. So yeah, you should be able to do that. Then yeah, no destructive, no, ideally, you know, well, ideally no, you shouldn't destruct your setup. That's why it's procedural first. If I use a solid color layer, brick procedural layer, painted layer, that will be properly show up across, yeah. That will properly show up across the UVs as a rasterized layer as expected. Yes, if you bake things, yes. I mean, Blender will be auto baking. That's one of the big challenges. Actually, that is mentioned in the what is it? Layer textures. Well, this is a presentation that we gave today, actually, and just showing here because there's really nothing to hide. It's all public info. Actually, it's just a presentation of the things that we already covered in the blog post. So like the preview, the sneak peek, and multi-layer images save as multi-layer or as individual images with pattern. This is one of the aspects of the multi-layer workflow. Potentially containing painted, baked, and utility layers makes it easy to browse in the image editor, add single images, and so on and so forth. So this again is not this is a presentation we gave here, but it's not anything private really. It's all information that is taken from the layer texture design, which is already presented on the blog in 2022. Is an evolution. Like if you look at multi-layer, there it's all explained here. So multi-layer and boundary, see? So so your question is answered here, and what I was just showing is in the it's a summary of that. Okay. Yeah, exactly same concept. Next, Namnambat says, hey, how's your day been? Pretty good, although having given a presentation here to a bunch of people, get more nervous presenting to my colleagues that I've worked for over a decade with than doing it on YouTube for thousands of people for some reason. How's your day been? So good. I'm still working on figuring out a proposal for the video clip editor, TLC pass rework, and I still can't figure out a better name. Without video processing, tracking workspace is too specific. Or can we add more features for making data from we could add more features for making data from footage to it as well, like photogrammetry, scene reconstruction. Have you thought much about renaming it? About the movie clip editor? Yes, of course. Actually, it's well, I don't. Where is it? I'm not gonna find it, but there is a task from really old rename editor. Like I think I had it for UI module roadmap. No, I had it for. It's so old, but I wanted to rename the movie clip editor. Clip and rename. No. Anyway, I'm not gonna find it, but there is a task where I suggest to rename for Blender 2.8. I think one of the target 2.8, 2019, 18. To rename the editor. So yes, we want to rename it, and it should become tracker, movie track, something like tracker. The same as the movie clip ID. Next, Jack Rocky says, hey, WinStream, WStream, Pablo. Thank you again. Thank you. Blender Roadmap promised they will look into improving performance of large blend scenes. Still haven't seen any updates on this specific topic. Will this be worked on after Vulkan and 5.3 is released? Waiting for things like EEVEE, camera culling image, texture compressions, and texture streaming proxies, LODs. Yes. Patience, please. Let's look at the roadmap. Blender.org/roadmap. code.blender.org/roadmap. I should make a redirect so it's easy to go. Okay, so Android platform. Yes, Blender for Android is coming. Project setup is what I show you. Project is the projects in Blender. So variables like big productions. Yes. OpenPVR is also coming. It's being worked on at the moment. Raycast, that has been worked on. I think that this could be marked as done for cycles. Anyway, also work in progress. Dynamic overrides being worked on. Collection import, I show you today the progress, even though it's experimental, soon being worked on. Ripple editing literally being worked on. The idea is to get rid of all the mode switching and just have tools for ripple and regular editing. Loop tools. 3 of the three operators made it into 5.2, and the remaining one will be for 5.3. So it's being worked on. I think the next one is 2 curve. Texture layers, I just show you today. Well, actually, I even have I have a build here just to show you texture layers is happening. Look at this beautiful cube that has a BSDF, an adjustment layer that I can control the opacity with. I'm changing the hue. Checker, this is a texture group. It's a checker texture that you can collapse. And the checker texture has a wave texture that is actually a mask. You can see the icon here. This is masking it out. You can adjust the mask influence. You can change the texture mapping right? Like it was Blender internal. You can change the wave types. You can do so much. Texture, that is what is below here. You can change the scale. The colors are different. Why? Because I have an HSV, hue saturation value. I disable that and then I get the regular wave texture. UDIM, you can specify a UDIM tile. This is actually a node group that comes in Blender. You have a fill, and then you also have a paint layer at the very bottom. This is a paint layer. You can go into texture paint and you should be able to look at that. I'm painting on an completely procedural setup that I'm working on in the sidebar. Image layers. When you work on a paint layer, remember, this is all work in progress, but you can specify the layers of your picture here. Okay, this doesn't have a name, but name. I don't want to make it crash yet, but you have a layer in this image. Then you have passes, metallic roughness. You can paint on the normal, the base color, the roughness, anyway, you can specify the types. Like, there is so much work going on. But let's not stop there. Let's go. Fluid simulation, literally being worked on at the moment using, there is a new node for fluid simulation with geometry nodes. Being worked on, it's not in main, it's worked on. Layer compositing, I shall show you today, that is coming. Gaussian splatting, there are already tests of it working in cycles, while EEVEE is being worked on. Gaussian splatting. Material lighting node, so NPR, is also being worked on. Layer actions. Yesterday, the first meeting started to kickstart the project of layer actions. Boolean carver tool, literally being worked on. There is a, I think it didn't even make it already, no. But it's being worked on, and the last update is being 9 hours. No, it's 4 days ago. So model node tools, media management. So you can't really say that there's no news. Like, literally everything that I show you is being worked on. Yes, there is some other things that maybe are mentioned as in and still being worked on. The media management, the media bin is unfortunately not, well, because of Ripple Edit. This project, it looks like a lot of projects, but it's usually the same people working in either one of the projects. So texture cache in cycle was amazing, but why wasn't the texture layers being done at the same time? Because it's the same person really is just working on both. Anyway, it's a small team, so please, patience. There's so much being worked on. Big blend files are a priority, so it is something that it will be worked on, and it's not that the team doesn't need it. Everybody needs big blend file working. But I show you today, well, actually today was all about performance. All the changes recently for 5.2, for 5.3, supporting new files, bigger files. In 5.0 was added support for having blend files with bigger than 2 GB data blocks in it. So that is worked big time. I hope you all see it, and that your donation money from fund.blender.org is going into good usage. So I hope everybody had a good time today. It's a good way of closing it with a little reminder to the Dev Fund and to all the work that the team is doing over here. So I hope you had a great time. I did. So let me bring in the music here. Last time wasn't that loud. People say that it could be louder, so I think we're gonna do it a bit louder this time. See you next time, which is, oh wait, let me see when. Actually, the next episode is on the 18th, which is gonna be holiday time for me. I am taking a day off, a week off, so I'm back on the week after, which is September 1st, the week of the month of the Blender conference. So yes, we're not gonna see each other, but the next time actually you're gonna get twice as many new features, so maybe that makes it worthwhile. I hope you had a good time. I did. It was fun. See you next time, same place, on September 1st, in 1 month, for the next episode of Blender Today live. Watch out for your ear holes. It wasn't that loud, was it? Or maybe it was. Thanks everyone. Happy blending. I'll see you next time, same place. Hopefully, if I manage to make it home. Bye.